Reflex is an exciting new pre-emergent herbicide from Syngenta, used to target broadleaf weeds in a range of pulse and vetch crops, giving your crop the best opportunity to establish strongly. My name's Trent, and I'm joined by James Considine from Syngenta's Tech Services. James has a wealth of knowledge around Syngenta products, particularly Reflex, and the benefits it can add to your farm. So let's head to the video at Inverleigh.
Hi, my name's James Considine. I'm in the Syngenta Technical Services team, and today I'm here at the Inverleigh trial site having a look at one of our new products called Reflex. Reflex is a new pre-emergent broadleaf weed herbicide for use in a range of pulse crops, and it's offering us improved weed control of those key hard to control weeds, and I see it as being a really good tool for us here in the high rainfall zone, particularly in crops like faba beans and vetch. So Reflex offers us excellent crop safety. Here we've used the maximum rate of 1.5 litres incorporated by sowing in these faba beans, and we're seeing excellent crop safety and really good weed control as well. So we just had a look at Reflex at the maximum rate when put out incorporated by sowing or before the sowing process. Now we're taking a look here at Reflex that's been put out after sowing but prior to the emergence of the crop. And we're seeing excellent crop safety here. The maximum rate here is 1250 mils. The crop's looking really good, and even compared to the crop where it's had no herbicide at all, it's looking the same. So demonstrating that crop safety of Reflex, and with the opportunity to put Reflex on post-sowing, we're able to get better weed control in the furrow, whereas we know with any pre-emergent, when you move all that herbicide out of the furrow with the sowing process, we can get some weed escapes, whereas with this option, we expect a higher level of weed control. Reflex is a Group G herbicide mode of action, or when we go to the numerical classification, that'll be a Group 14. Most of you will be more familiar with Group G. It's a residual pre-emergent herbicide, and it's the only Group G that offers us control claims across our key pulse crops and our key broadleaf weeds when applied IBS or PSPE in faba beans. So we've got very good flexibility when we use it, and we've got that different mode of action, which is really important from a resistance management point of view, particularly when we're seeing increased cases of resistance, particularly to Group I and Group B herbicide modes of action. So we're getting a different mode of action in our rotation here with this product, but we're not sacrificing weed control. So we've seen Reflex over a number of years provide really good long in-season residual activity on broadleaf weeds, even down here in the high rainfall zone. As we can see here, it's been quite wet earlier in the year. Reflex is giving us good broadleaf weed residual activity, in a lot of cases longer than our current standards. So I see Reflex as being a really useful tool for us down here to help manage those broadleaf weeds in that pulse phase. It won't have activity on grass species, so we'll need to have something in our mix for control of grass weeds. But as far as broadleaf weeds go, Reflex is going to be an excellent tool for us to help manage those broadleaf weeds in our rotation. So in summary, I see Reflex as a really exciting new tool for us in the high rainfall zone to be able to manage broadleaf weeds better. A really good tool, particularly in faba beans and also vetch as our key pulse crops down here, and enabling us to get better broadleaf weed control.
Thanks for that informative video, James. Any questions, feel free to add them into the chat box and we'll get to them. So whilst you guys are all hopefully typing in questions, James, would you feel free to tell us a bit more about Reflex as a product?
Yeah, thanks, Trent. Great to get down to the site a week or so ago, and everything's looking really good. Hopefully, everyone can get there and have a look later in the year. I suppose just setting the scene for Reflex, we've been using a lot of Group C type products in the pulse phase, and typically we're struggling to get adequate length of residual and adequate weed control in that pulse phase. So that's been the real demand for a new option for growers in there, and that's why growers are so excited about Reflex. It does offer us that longer length of residual, which is going to be really important, particularly in the high rainfall zone where we do have those longer seasons. So, having said that, I don't see Reflex as being a silver bullet to every problem. In a lot of cases, it will likely be mixed with a Group C, just to broaden out that weed control spectrum. Reflex is particularly strong on brassica targets. So, as an example, wild radish being one of our key weeds in the Western districts, a really useful tool there. Another reason growers are so excited and giving us really good feedback around Reflex, this year being the first season it was commercially available, is that we can put it out incorporated by sowing or prior to sowing our faba beans, but we can also opt to do that, or we could potentially put it out post-sowing pre-emergent. And the advantage of that is that we can, with a post-sowing pre-emergent application, we can improve our weed control, particularly in the furrow where we often see some escapes because we've moved that herbicide out of there. And another thing with Reflex is it is a Group G or a Group 14, so it will control weeds resistant to other modes of action, or also be a really useful tool to reduce the onset of resistance development. Other feedback we've had is growers in lower pressure, using radish as an example, lower pressure situations are considering the option of moving away from varieties, herbicide tolerant varieties such as Bendoc, and moving to varieties with better disease packages and higher yield potential. And then some guys with higher radish populations may opt to keep varieties such as Bendoc in their rotation, so they've got an IMI option up their sleeve to help with weed control and get them through the season from that point of view. As mentioned in the video, we've seen really good crop safety over a range of seasons in varying soil types and varying rainfall environments, including the last couple of years with southern farming systems and also commercial jobs in the Western districts. Even on raised beds, we've been trialling Reflex and had really good results so far. So that's probably a couple of key points from me. Trent, have we got any questions there we need to run through?
Yeah, we've got one here from the floor, which is good. Chris said earlier that we need to get wild radish with 2 hits. How do you see Reflex being able to do that?
Yeah, well, firstly, it's going to be with the exclusion of a knockdown, our first hit at radish, and it's going to be a much improved hit compared to what we've had previously, given that longer residual. So we're really going to be able to reduce the pressure on, as I mentioned before, if we're using a herbicide tolerant variety like Bendox and coming in with an IMI later on in the season, it's certainly going to reduce the pressure on that IMI and enable us to keep that in our tool belt for longer. But it just gives us a much more powerful first hit at that radish than what we've been accustomed to until now.
Yeah, good answer. I've got one for you just out of my own curiosity. So is there a more specific recommended rate for Reflex in the Western districts, given we're in a higher rainfall zone? Yeah, it's a really good question, Trent. We've got quite a big rate range on our label. So if we're using it IBS, we've got 500 mil all the way up to 1.5 litres. And then if using it post-sowing pre-emergent, 500 mil up to 1250 mil in the case of faba beans. In the Western districts, typically what we see is we're a higher rainfall environment. We've got a longer growing season, and often we will be tackling higher weed densities. So in those situations, we're looking to go towards the higher end of the rate range. So certainly above a litre, whether it's we're using it prior to or immediately after sowing. But yeah, we've got the scope to go up to 1.5 litres when using prior to sowing in beans, and up to 1250 mils when using it post sowing, but pre-emergent of the crop. It's whilst the crops have some tolerance to this product, we need to ensure that we're not applying it to any of that green plant material. So it's really important we get it on straight after sowing. But in the Western district, Trent, yeah, towards the higher end of the rate range, given we're really after that length of residual and often targeting higher density populations. Yep. And if Reflex is used as an IBS, what's the minimum sowing depth recommended?
Yep, good question. Typically around that 30 mils, a good starting point, as long as it's adequate to achieve that seed herbicide separation. And often 30 mil will be adequate for that with our typical knife point press wheel seeding system.
Yep. Another one we've had come up is, what's the mixability of Reflex specifically with more grass-based herbicides?
Yeah, that's a good one. As indicated, Reflex has no claims on our grass weeds, so certainly looking to take the opportunity to put something in there. If we're looking to mix, we've done quite a bit of testing work, and then also in field feedback this year, being our first commercial year, that Reflex is mixed very well with all of the standard grass pre-emergents. So yeah, certainly quite compatible from that point of view.
Yeah. Is Reflex also able to be used in a spring sown legume program? And does that alter the rates as well that it should be applied at?
Essentially, I think we'd be looking at fairly similar dynamics. It's not one we've done extensive work on, and certainly something we can look at with the Southern Farming Systems team, given the increasing amount of that occurring, particularly in the Western District. But yeah, essentially, I'd be expecting the same type of rates to control those target weeds.
Yeah. And finally, how's the supply looking for the 2022 season?
Yeah, that's a really good one. Registration came just in time to get some Reflex out this season, and we were a little bit limited in supply, but bearing in mind that we got registration 12 months earlier than planned. So as a consequence of that, we've geared up extensively, and we've got Reflex being manufactured locally in Australia as we speak now, and we're getting a significant volume manufactured. So if anyone's interested in Reflex, I'd certainly be advocating they discuss their requirements with their local supplier, but we are quite confident we're getting a very robust volume ready for the coming season.